What, you mean you're going to talk about 1989? You should have told me that first, man.
Yeah, call me back in 15 minutes. Ray,
I have to admit it was a decent game.
It was my first memory of an FA Cup final. I thought they were all going to be like that. Obviously, it wasn't the case. Ray, it was a remarkable day for so many reasons. Liverpool trying to bounce back from the defeat to Wimbledon the year before, from losing out to Michael Thomas just a couple of weeks beforehand. But obviously, and most importantly of all, the game came just 5 weeks after the Hillsborough disaster. Your memory of...
Not only that, Nathan, you've got it slightly wrong, because we're going to play after that final, because it went the extra time on the Saturday. On the Tuesday, we played West Ham, and then the following Friday, we played against Arsenal.
Oh, sorry.
Michael Thomas goal. So that was so... we could have done the double that season. We were on for it, after obviously what happened at Hillsborough. There was a coming together at Wembley from the supporters of both Liverpool and Everton. They all came down to watch the game, and it was a very emotional match from that point of view. But obviously, we just about got the upper hand over Everton over the course of the 120 minutes. Great. It was a fantastic game. Obviously, as I said, the emotional side of it was quite incredible, and it was on to try and win the league. Was it 6 days later?
Kenny Dalglish said that it was a game that meant more to him than any other game he'd been involved in, an emotional experience, one that gave him a deep sense of happiness. What was it like compared to, say, the build-up 12 months previously? Was it a game, a final you were looking forward to, or after all that had gone before, was it just one you wanted to get done?
Yeah, I think it was a game you wanted to get done, to be honest. If someone had said to the Liverpool players, Nathan, after what happened in the semi-final at Sheffield Wednesday against Nottingham Forest, that the season was over, I think most of the Liverpool players would have said okay, because at that stage, nothing was further from our minds than just going to the ground and seeing the family and friends of the ones who'd passed away coming down to the ground, just wanting to be around the club, wanted to speak to the players. So we had no intent really. If someone had said don't play, we would have said thanks very much, but yeah, you have to go on it. You have to be professional. We had to play the games after that, and we were really focused on making sure that we finished the season in memory of the ones that passed away. So it was uppermost in our minds just to go out there and do as well as we could in the remaining fixtures that we had.
What was the atmosphere like, Ray? It must have been a little bit kind of surreal and almost certainly subdued and a little bit unlike you'd have experienced, I suppose, at a game.
Well, do you know what? It wasn't quite as subdued as you would think. The Everton fans came along as part of the city of Liverpool to come together. Because it wasn't just Liverpool that was hurting. It was the world of football was hurting after what had happened. We've all got fans of clubs. They all go to games to watch the team and support them as best they can. And you don't expect 96 of them not to come back from a semi-final, and that was the case. So the Everton fans were there because they knew people who died. Obviously maybe family, friends, relatives, or whatever the case may be. So they were there to support them and also support the team, and if you watch the game again, I think there was a couple of occasions, when the fans were on the pitch, and they just wanted to be part of the day. That's the way it came across, but it was very emotional. I did find that much more so than the other two finals that I played in the FA Cup. That was the most emotional one by far.
Did it help, Ray, that it was actually Everton in that final?
Yes, absolutely, Kev, no doubt about it. I think it was fitting in many respects because, as I say, there was some very tough games between the two teams in the city, but that brought everyone together. There's no question about it. If you looked at fans coming down to the game, whether it be on coaches, whether it be in cars, on trains, they all came down together. That might not have always happened, but certainly for that particular game, that was the case. The whole city came together to come down and support the team, but it was through, obviously this great tragedy that were there as such, and the players just wanted to put on a good show.
Pat, from an Everton player's point of view, it certainly was quite fitting that it was a Merseyside derby for a cup final, because it wasn't just a tragedy for Liverpool Football Club, it was a terrible tragedy for the city of Liverpool. The build-up from an Everton player's point of view, what was it like? Now we seem to have lost Pat, I think.
There you go.
Unfortunately. Yeah, Pat isn't with us at the moment. We'll come back to Pat Nevin in just a moment. Ray, the emotion of the day then, like, had you spoken about that in the dressing room the day before the game, how to channel that in the right way, that you could go and perform on the day and weren't sort of overwhelmed by everything that was happening?
Do you know what, Nathan? We didn't need a team talk. Everyone knew what it was about. You know, we knew that we had to go out and perform for obvious reasons. You mentioned the season before losing to Wimbledon. You know, that was my first ever FA Cup final that I played in. And when you don't perform and you end up on the losing side, it hurts. So when you get back there, you know, you want to make doubly sure that you're ready for it. And I think, as you say, with all the emotions that was going on, that the players knew. You didn't have to go around and tell anyone. There was no real team talk from Kenny Dalglish. It was just go out there and perform. And, you know, we went 1-0 up when John Oldham. I mean, John missed the penalty this season before in the final against Wimbledon, and then gets the opening goal, you know, the following campaign and the final in '89. So from his point of view, you know, that was great for him. You know, it really helped him. And, you know, in fairness to Everton, they got themselves back into it. And then we went 2-1 up. They pulled it back again. Stuart McCall got his second goal of the game. And then when the extra time in, Barnes, he played the ball in, rush header, and that was it, you know. And then it was just joy scenes, I think, from the Liverpool supporters that their team had won the FA Cup that season.
Pat Nevin is back on the line. Pat, we were just talking about the build-up to the game and how fitting it was that it was an all-Merseyside Cup final, because it had been a true tragedy for the city of Liverpool, and the effect that might have had on the Everton players in the build-up to the game, and what should have been this joyous experience. The FA Cup was the biggest game in English football at the time, something you just can't wait to walk out at Wembley, and it's a very different day from what it should have been.
Completely different day. A real shame, a real sadness, you know, that any football game should be affected. But hey, that was so background. You didn't care about that at all. What you did is quite simply the best you could possibly do under that circumstance. I didn't want to play the game because I thought it was that unimportant, and because the families said no, we want to play. The families of those who died wanted to play. We thought, right, we'll play and we'll give it a real good shot, because you have to show respect for it. And that it was a strange time. Nobody on the planet wanted us to win, clearly, but we weren't going to step off it. And it did turn out to be a classic game, but also, more importantly, the fans got together. The feeling before that game was extraordinary. The emotions before that game were extraordinary. And I went away not disappointed losing the game. You know, I've never watched the game to this day since, ever. You know, I've seen a goal vaguely once or twice. Often use some part phrases about it, such as, you know, they cheated, which they clearly did, by bringing John Aldridge on, bringing Ian Rush on as a substitute. That's definitely cheating. Always felt that was the case. But the quality of team that we were playing against on the day was extraordinary. Oddly enough, I'd had the weirdest week. I'd actually scored two FA Cup winning, two semi-final winning goals within a short period, within a week. And it was another cup, there was the full Members Cup and the FA Cup within a week. And it wasn't noticed by anyone. And any other time I'd have been upset with that. I couldn't give a stuff at the time.
Yeah.
But I remember going out before the game, you've seen the Everton fans, they wanted to win that game. It was a game, but it also was two clubs that kind of, you know, almost pretend hatred towards each other. It was completely dropped for that day, but it was still passionate though.
Yeah, it must be an incredibly difficult thing for, you know, lads in their 20s, particularly the Everton players, where I guess at the time, I've no memory of it, but that all the neutrals wanted Liverpool to win, that felt it would be just and right if Liverpool won that game, and you're going in to try and upset that and to try and mark your own careers with an FA Cup medal, but knowing that really the right thing for history is, in a way, for Liverpool to win this.
No, you think that afterwards. I'm afraid before the game, you just do the right thing. You try and win the game. I gave everything I had that day, and I know every one of our players did exactly the same. There was nothing left there. Liverpool didn't beat a weekend or an average or an Everton side that were going at 90% or 80%. No, Liverpool beat us when we were going at 100%. You had to put that behind you. Not the thoughts of what had happened, because they were always there, but professionalism takes over. And it really does. It just, you think, no, get your head right. You've got 90 minutes, or in this case, 120 minutes to get it right. I mean, the last thing I wanted, I wonder if Ray knows. Is Ray still on the line there? Had it gone to 3-3, had we equalised again, I don't think it was penalties. I think it was a replay, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a replay around then. 1990, it went to a replay.
I don't think we could have played any more games, to be honest. We had so much to catch up on. We still had West Ham on the Tuesday and Arsenal on the Friday. We also had a World Cup qualifier for Ireland on the Sunday, if you remember. We played against Malta. So I think as players, the Irish players at that time, we had 4 games in 8 days. And if you look at the importance of them, a final of the FA Cup, 2 games to try and win you the league, and then a World Cup qualifier, it was pretty tough. And obviously with the emotional side of it as well. I'll tell you an interesting one, Nathan. I watched the documentary on the semi-final, and it was more about Everton when they won their semi-final on I think the same day that obviously our game had been postponed because of the tragedy at Hillsborough. And if you watch the Everton fans coming out of that and the Everton players after that semi-final win, which should have been a joyous occasion, because you're getting to the final, it wasn't. Have a look at it. It's an amazing one. And I've seen some of the Everton players talking about it, and they said we couldn't enjoy the day because of obviously what had happened. And it was eerie coming out of the ground afterwards. No fans were jumping up and down. There was no one that was, enjoying the occasion. And back then they didn't have mobile phones. They couldn't ring home to find out exactly what was going on, so they had to wait a length of time. So I think that semi-final, that's which made it much more difficult, I think, for Everton. Whether it should have been a happy occasion, it couldn't have been. And then they've got to come into a final where you said just about everyone wanted Liverpool to win.
That must have taken a hell of a toll in those few weeks, Ray. Even from the footballing end to it, from a cup final to the Arsenal game to Ireland at the time, where things are going incredibly well. You're on the cusp of qualifying for a World Cup finals. Like when the season wraps up, can you remember what you were like at that stage when you finally got a break and time to breathe? It
was just like, I'm glad that's over with. It really was. I go back to none of the Liverpool players really wanted the season to go on. After Hillsborough, we were hoping the decision would have been taken out of our hands as such, as a club, and that the FA or whoever was running the league, the FA Cup at that time, just said, you know what, after what's happened, there's no point continuing. And Pat's just mentioned that himself. In many respects, going into the game, the Everton players, well, we have to be professional, but deep down they were thinking, well, football. What's football at this stage? Life's much more important, and these fans who've lost their lives, that's the most important thing, rather than playing football itself. And that's how we thought about it. But you've got to get, then you switch into your professional mode, because that's what you have to do, and you have to play the games because, that's what you've been asked to do, and you go out there and you try to do your best. Not only for your league club, but as you just said, internationally as well. It's important because we played on the Friday night. We flew over to the island on the Saturday, and then tried to meet up with the other lads to get prepared for the game on the Sunday, which probably wouldn't happen today. I don't think UEFA or whoever was running that particular competition at the time were probably allowed that to have happened.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, really, that time? But probably a question for both of you. We were talking earlier, and we were all listing off our favourite FA Cup finals and our FA Cup memories, and I could list probably every one through the 80s growing up. My dad came back from the pub in 86 with this VHS video recorder, and I recorded the Merseyside derby. I must have watched it back about 100 times.
He came back from the pub with a video recorder?
Video recorder. Don't ask any questions, Johnny. Don't ask
back in the day.
Don't ask the questions, honest to God. That's the way they did.
You have a point in a video recorder.
But
You've had enough. There's your VHS though. Out you go.
That's exactly what it was. But you lads would have played. We were talking about when the FA Cup probably has lost its maybe appeal, and maybe was it around the time when the Premier League first kicked in? But you lads were playing through that time when the FA Cup would have meant so much to you lads, and you'd been playing through a time when both your clubs were huge within English football. Was there ever a moment within that time through your careers where you thought the FA Cup probably isn't as maybe appealing as it once was?
Well, I'll let Ray go first.
I'll just say absolutely not, Kev. Yeah. It meant everything to me, to be honest, because when you're growing up, it was such a special day, the FA Cup final. I mean, I can go much further back than you boys. You're stuck in the 80s. I can go back to the 70s. I can remember Leeds against Sunderland. I remember when Arsenal done the double way back in 71. There's other games that come to memory, but I was watching Liverpool against Newcastle. with Kevin Keegan when he was involved. So there was spectacular moments in this competition. It was everything. I mean, the European Cup, obviously, because it was only one team from each country that was in it. Not like today where you get 4, and even maybe next season the English teams might even have 5 in the competition. It wasn't like that. That was just just one team from each country represented by winning the league. So the FA Cup for me was the special one. So I watched that all the time, loved it, loved the day, I loved the build-up, and it's something I always wanted to be able to go and play in, and I was very fortunate playing the 3 of them. But to me, every time you played an FA Cup game, you always had thoughts of, I hope I can get to Wembley this season.
Yeah, I would say a couple of odd things. No, it's not as important as it was. Absolutely, you can't say it is, because the Premier League has grown so much, and the Champions League has grown so much, and there's more teams in it, just as Ray says. I think there were a couple of turning points. Can you remember Manchester United didn't send a full squad over they went to the World Club Championship or something?
Yeah.
It had an effect on what people were thinking of the game then. And then there just was that period where the big clubs didn't throw out the big names in the early rounds, and you got these upsets. And they were upsets, but they were kind of upsets because they were half a team out there or an almost entirely reserve team out there. So that certainly had some impact on it. It's still worldwide, it's massive. If you talk to anybody around the world, they're still interested in that trophy and in that competition. But to the level it was before, when there was less football on the television, no. And remember, how many live games actually were on the television then? There were very, very few. Well, certainly in the UK, there was very, very few. So that added to it. Now you're taking away that. Now there's hundreds of games on every year. So it's a great competition. I'll be watching it glued to it like everybody else today and looking forward to it. And I hope there is something fabulously memorable that happens from it. But is it seen as important as it was? Absolutely. No, it's not. You'd be lying to say that.
Just briefly, Pat, before we leave 89, obviously that was at a time when the English clubs weren't allowed play in Europe. Where Everton were at that stage and that Liverpool team, if they were allowed into Europe, would they have been the best teams in Europe? Would Liverpool have been winning the European Cup?
I think Liverpool would have. They were a fabulous team. You just have a look through that squad, that team that played that day. There was world-class players all over the place. So it was a long period of time where certainly Liverpool were. But it's not the actual teams. It's had you had European football and the European Cup or any European competitions, you could have got more and better players in from abroad, and you would have been an even better team than you were. 2 or 3 players in that you wouldn't have got otherwise. So that would have made a big difference. So the teams that we had, they would have been competitive. I'm pretty confident about that. And Liverpool, above all, were probably more than competitive, were as likely as anyone to win it. But it was just such a shame because I lost my entire European career over that. I never seen any European football until Tranmere Rovers in the Anglo-Italian Cup. And that was sort of gutting to have that taken away. And you listen to the stories these days of all these players that played all these, Ronaldo's played 100 games or whatever in the Champions League, and you're thinking, hey, I wouldn't have minded one. It would have been good that we hadn't got the opportunity. Well, I had the opportunity. I could have gone abroad and played, but, I just love playing in this country. So, again, at the time, you were maybe slightly annoyed by it, but I never took it personally because, like, Ray, like a lot of the lads, we had international football, and that kind of put in the place of the European stuff that we missed.
Looking at today's game, if it is to be a memorable day, it probably needs to be a Watford victory for people to be talking about this in years to come. City have beaten them in every single Premier League game they've played since Watford were promoted. Do you give Watford any chance? How do you think they'll approach this game?
Well, personally, one of the biggest memories I've got of Manchester City was a game they played at Watford, I think it was last season. And they absolutely battered them, and it should have been double figures. And it wasn't far off it anyway. It was an extraordinary event. Now, that'll be memorable if that happens today and they get a complete tonking. I just don't think it will. I think Watford are better organised just now. What will Watford do? I think they'll just try and play their own game. They're in a stinker of a run just now. I mean, everyone, FA Cup, one-off game, all that sort of cliched stuff. They're on a bit of a stinker at the moment, and against Chelsea get hammered, and Chelsea weren't in great form, and they had a 4-1, was it West Ham, before that as well. So they're on a rotten run just now, but, if Deulofeu has one of those games, and obviously you need the big players, and I think they're quite happy that Hollybass is back as well, but it's all ifs and buts. if City play anywhere near their best of their ability, and then decide to really go for it in the second half by bringing Aguero and De Bruyne and Sané on, it's quite scary. It's hard to see away. It really is, and I don't think they'll be ultra defensive. They won't get the ball, so they won't be able to get out of their half much. Big. I think the biggest favourites I can remember for many, many years. In fact, almost all the way back until, dare I say it, Wimbledon, Liverpool.
Who knows?
Wigan, Man City.
Wigan, Man City, yeah. Ray, it's the usual catch-22 for any of these teams playing against Manchester City. You want to go out and give an account of yourself and say that you played in a cup final and you tried to win the cup final, but if you do that, you might be playing right into Manchester City's hands.
Well, that's a point in case, Nathan. I absolutely have to disagree with you, though, where you said there, it's only going to be a great game if Watford win. I'm sorry, but let's just understand what Man City could achieve today. They've already won the League Cup. They've won the league. They're on the cusp of being the only team in England ever to win all 3 domestic trophies in one season. That's what I'm looking forward to watching today, is to seeing a team that could do that. I didn't think there would be. I didn't think there'd be anyone good enough who could compete at that level in all these competitions. And by the way, they only got knocked out of the quarterfinals of the Champions League on away goals. That's how consistent they've been this season. They've been absolutely outstanding. 98 points in the league. I think they've got 95 goals in the league. I think overall they've got over 160. I'll tell you what, let's sit down and applaud this team for what they've achieved. They've put on a level of performance not seen in the English game for a long, long time. That's how consistent they've been, and they deserve all the praise they're going to get. And if they do beat Watford today, and it's most likely they will, what an achievement. An outstanding achievement, and the players, the manager, and everyone associated with Man City should be applauded for going into all these games and playing at the level that they are, which is absolutely admirable to watch.
I think that's a fair point as well, because you look today, I think Sané's been linked with the move away because he's not happy with the game time. He kept all those players happy to win their last 14 games in the league, and they had a lot of very tough games, in fairness. Leicester put it up to them. They had to find a way around that. They found a way around that. They were unlucky in the Champions League. They've played a brand of football that's probably as good as we've ever seen in England, and sometimes you just have to admire a team. I'm not expecting Anthem this to be anyway competitive, but you have to sometimes wallow in virtuosity.
It'd be interesting to see if it's a bit of a release for them, because they've had the league pressure to win the games, and all of a sudden, the different setting. I mean, they could actually turn on a show. They could put on a show.
That's why it's memorable. It's the biggest cup final margin of victory of all time.
Yeah.
Ray, Pat, thanks a lot for taking the call. Enjoy the game.